If you have reached this content, it is essential to understand that this was not a random event or a coincidence of an algorithm. There are moments in the course of life when intuition takes command and guides the steps toward an answer that the rational mind cannot formulate. This is exactly one of those moments. It is likely that for some time now you have felt that a certain story in your life is hanging in the air, like a half-finished sentence or a melody that stopped before the final chord, and it does not feel like a definitive ending, but it is also not moving toward a clear resolution. This feeling of stagnation is not a product of your imagination or a fantasy created by the desire to cling to the past. It is a real perception that a cycle exists that has not yet been properly closed. Life observes what you carry in silence. The universe is a witness to the sleepless nights, the mental confusion, and that recurring question of whether what you experienced was an illusion or an absolute truth. It perceives the emotional exhaustion that arises when belief weakens in the absence of tangible signs in the physical world. However, if you are receiving this message now, it is because there is still a living ember in this connection. Perhaps there were words left unspoken, decisions postponed out of fear, or feelings hidden behind pride and silence. The hardest part of this phase is not the physical distance or the lack of digital communication, but the uncertainty of not knowing whether to continue believing in the connection or to try to let it go completely. This doubt weighs heavier than any explicit rejection. It is crucial to understand that this message does not arrive to create more confusion, but to offer radical clarity. The fear you feel comes from trying to solve a spiritual issue with logical tools. You have tried to analyze every gesture, every absence, and every silence of this person in search of a coherent explanation, but deep connections do not respond to conventional logic. What is about to be defined in your reality depends on an inner decision that only your being can make. Not tomorrow, not when you feel stronger, but now. There are connections that do not wait forever, and windows of opportunity that open to allow reunion or liberation. Your next step is not a small action or an insignificant movement. It is not about sending an impulsive text message or forcing a physical meeting. It is about a shift in consciousness that has the power to open a path or close it forever. Certain connections did not arise out of nothing. There was a mutual recognition, something that awakened dormant parts within you, and that is why the separation hurt so much. But the good news is that destiny does not play with emotions. If this person continues to occupy space in your mind, it is because the lesson and the purpose of the connection are still relevant. Prepare yourself, because what you are about to discover will change the way you interpret silence and will give you the key to unlock the flow of this relationship. If you are ready to integrate this teaching into your life, write in the comments, "I activate my destiny today." To move forward toward resolving this connection, it is first necessary to validate what you feel and dismantle the idea that you are losing your mind. Society and the surrounding environment often advise quick forgetting and suggest that turning the page is simply a matter of willpower. However, depth psychology and universal laws agree on something fundamental. Physical distance is only an illusion when the mental connection remains active. You cannot simply forget because this is not an ordinary memory. It is a deep recognition that occurs on a level where time and space do not hold the same validity as in the material world. Carl Jung, one of the most brilliant minds in the study of the human psyche, introduced the existence of the collective unconscious and synchronicity. Jung proposed that there are events that appear to be coincidences but are in reality connected by deep meaning. When two people have shared genuine intimacy and an opening of the soul, a psychic bridge is created that does not simply break because communication stops. This is why sometimes out of nowhere the memory of this person overwhelms you with intense force, or why you dream of this presence precisely when you had decided to stop thinking about them. It is not obsession, it is information. It is confirmation that the connection is still alive on the invisible level. This connection is not measured by the frequency of messages or by mere half-hearted promises. It is measured by what is activated within your being each time this person's energy crosses your thoughts. It is measured by the way your heart responds and by how your intuition persists, even when your logical mind tries to deny the significance of the connection. This does not happen by chance. It happens because there is a bond permitted by universal intelligence to teach you something essential about love and about your own nature. For a long time you have tried to understand this story by observing the other person's external behavior, as if the whole truth resided there, but the secret is not outside. This person came into your life to function as a mirror of high fidelity. Everything that attracts you to them, and everything that hurts you in their absence, are reflections of aspects that live within you. Jung spoke of projection, and in this case, this person came to show you your deepest fears of abandonment, but also your infinite capacity to love and your vulnerability. That is why the lack of definition hurts so much. Because you are not only afraid of losing someone external, you are afraid of losing the version of yourself that awakened thanks to this connection. That sensitive and open version capable of feeling deeply. The true fear is closing yourself off again. It is the thought that this inner light will fade if this person does not return. It is important to understand that the universe has not punished you with this feeling. If the memory persists, it is because the inner transformation that this connection was meant to provoke is not yet complete. Soul-to-soul connections have an evolutionary purpose. They do not appear to fill gaps of boredom, but to trigger growth that would not occur in solitude. However, this is where most people make a fundamental mistake that blocks the return. They remain staring at the mirror, expecting the image to change on its own, without understanding that the mirror has no will of its own. The mirror only reflects what is placed in front of it. As long as you continue to project expectation, fear, and need, the mirror will return distance and silence. But there is a switch, a way to change the projected image that immediately transforms the reality of the connection. There is a subtle mistake you make every morning that pushes away what you most wish to attract. Understanding this is the first step to reclaiming your power in this story. It is necessary to dive into the daily dynamics that keep this situation stagnant and to analyze the behavior that unknowingly becomes the greatest obstacle to reunion. There is an invisible routine that many people in this situation adopt almost as a ritual of pain. It begins upon waking, when the first thought automatically goes to the absence of this person. It continues with checking the phone, searching for a notification that did not arrive, analyzing their last online time, or looking for clues on social networks that indicate what the other person is thinking or feeling. This constant monitoring, which the mind interprets as a way to keep the connection alive or not lose control, is in reality the silent mistake that cools the connection. Waiting, contrary to what is commonly believed, is not a passive or neutral activity. Waiting is an active and powerful energetic action, but its charge is dense. When you install yourself in the energy of waiting, you send a constant signal to the universe and to the other person's psyche that clearly says, this is not here, this is missing. Waiting feeds on lack, and in the world of energy and universal laws, lack attracts only more lack. By keeping yourself in a state of anxious expectation, you are in fact communicating mistrust. You are saying that you do not trust destiny to orchestrate the return, which is why you feel the need to constantly monitor the process. Here a fundamental psychological and energetic paradox comes into play, explaining why the more you try to get closer or know about this person, the more they distance themselves. It is the dynamic of pursuit and flight. On an unconscious level, all people seek to feel free in their choice to love. When the other person perceives, even from afar, that your well-being, your emotional stability, and your happiness depend exclusively on their return, they feel an invisible but overwhelming pressure. This pressure does not necessarily manifest through verbal reproaches. It is felt in the shared energetic field as a silent demand, as a burden. It is as if someone were trying to stand upright by leaning entirely on another's shoulders. The instinctive reaction of the one carrying this weight is to withdraw in order to regain balance and personal space. Therefore, Prolonged waiting cools what was once alive. Not because love has disappeared, but because the energy has become heavy, dense, and hard to breathe. Fate interprets this lack of movement in your own life as a surrender of your personal power. While your life pauses, waiting for someone else to press the start button, the natural flow of events becomes blocked. Life usually does not reward paralysis. When you put your existence on pause, believing this to be a demonstration of loyalty or unconditional love, you are in fact building a wall of resistance.
Resistance arises from fear. Fear that if you stop looking, if you stop waiting, if you stop worrying, the connection will dissolve. This fear is the great liar. It makes you believe that your anxiety is the glue holding the relationship together, when in reality it is the repellent that prevents the other person from feeling a natural curiosity to come closer. Honestly analyze how much life energy leaks away in this process of waiting. This confusion, this emotional fatigue, and this belief that weakens every time there are no clear signs are indicators that you are swimming against the current.
You are trying to force a door that only opens inward. Obsession with the external outcome has disconnected you from your center, and this disconnection is what the other person perceives as a lack of magnetic attraction. The mistake does not lie in the desire for reunion. The desire is natural and human. The mistake lies in needing the reunion in order to breathe in peace again. There is a profound difference between wanting someone to be part of your path and needing someone to be the entire path. Obsessive waiting places the other person on a pedestal and puts you in a position of energetic begging. And no true connection, no relationship on a high spiritual level can be sustained on the basis of inequality. For love to be real and lasting, it must be given between two whole beings, not between one who flees and another who must be saved. Deactivating this defense mechanism is vital. It is not about pretending that you do not care, because the universe does not respond to acting, it responds to authentic vibration. It is about understanding that your fear does not accelerate time, it only makes it heavier. Waiting is a form of resistance because it implies that the present moment is not enough, that something essential is missing for life to be worth living. And as long as you reject your present, the future you desire cannot arrive. Life recognizes this vibration of lack and obediently offers you more waiting time according to the law of the mirror. To change the external outcome, one must first have the courage to take attention away from what is missing and place it on what already exists. It is an act of radical faith to let go of monitoring in order to allow life to work. If you could observe the fabric of reality from a higher perspective, you would see that physical separation is far less definitive than it seems. Modern science, through quantum physics, has begun to explore concepts such as entanglement, where two particles that have interacted continue to share information instantly, regardless of the distance separating them. On a human and spiritual level, this is an ancient truth. Consciousnesses that have deeply touched each other remain in constant communication through a channel that requires neither technology nor words. There is an invisible connection, a kind of conductive thread that keeps the flow of emotional information between you and this special connection active. This explains why, in many cases, the other person senses the inner movement you make, even if they do not rationally understand it. Perhaps it has happened to you that on the very day you truly decided to stop worrying and take care of your own affairs, you received a sign, a message, or news from them. This is not a coincidence, it is the mechanics of communicating vessels. When you release the pressure at your end of the thread, the other party feels an immediate relief, a kind of energetic liberation that awakens their curiosity. While you pull on the rope with your need and obsession, the other side tenses up and resists. When you let go of the rope, the tension disappears and then approach becomes possible. This non-local communication manifests through subtle signs that you often discard because they seem too irrational. Dreams, for example, are fertile ground for these encounters. Dreaming of this person, especially at moments when there were no external stimuli to trigger the memory, is usually an indicator that the other party's psyche is processing emotions related to the connection. Likewise, those sudden feelings of sadness, joy, or nostalgia that overwhelm you for no apparent reason in the middle of your daily routine can be empathic resonances of what the other person is experiencing. It is as if you were sharing a common emotional system at a distance. The invisible connection functions like a radio transmitter that never fully turns off. However, the quality of the transmission depends on the clarity of the channel. If your inner world is full of noise, fear, worry, and mental accusations toward the other person, the signal becomes distorted. An emotional interference is created that prevents subtle messages of love and recognition from reaching their destination. You may now feel that this presence approaches and then retreats in a confusing back and forth. This happens because there is an invisible blockage, a closed door within you that prevents physical reunion. This blockage is not the other person, not their circumstances, nor third parties. The blockage is the density of your own fear of losing. Intuition exists because it captures the subtle. It knows that the story is not finished because the energy continues to circulate. But it is crucial to distinguish between true intuition and anxious attachment. Intuition is calm, it is a quiet certainty that tells you everything is fine, trust. Attachment, on the other hand, is loud, urgent, and full of panic. The invisible connection is strengthened by calm and weakened by desperation. If you manage to enter a state of neutrality in which you love without possessing and miss without dying, you cleanse the channel. There is a fascinating phenomenon that occurs in these deep connections, emotional telepathy. It is not about reading thoughts word for word, but about the transmission of states of being. When you are at peace, you send waves of peace that invite the other person to enter that state. When you are in inner war, you send waves of conflict that put the other person on the defensive, even if you have not exchanged a single word for months. The other party responds far more to your energy than to your visible actions. That is why manipulation strategies or games to provoke jealousy never work in soul connections. The other person perceives the energetic incoherence behind the action and withdraws even further. Recognizing this non-local connection brings responsibility with it. You can no longer see yourself as a victim of absence because you understand that you are always actively participating in the energetic conversation. Every time you replace a thought of defeat with one of trust, you send an invitation to reunion. Every time you heal one of your own wounds, you lighten the load of the shared connection. The red thread that connects kindred souls is resilient. It does not break with time or silence, but it must be free of knots so that love can glide through it. Sometimes life allows this physical separation precisely so that you discover the power of this invisible connection, so that you learn to trust what you cannot see and feel, the presence of love beyond tangible form. It is a lesson of faith and perception. When you can feel the connection in silence, when you can honor the connection without the need for constant proof, you master unconditional love. And it is this mastery that becomes irresistible. The energy of someone who knows who they are and trusts their connection is magnetic. It is important to remember that the universe leaves no loose ends. If the connection exists with such force within you, it is because there is a corresponding reality outside. The law of polarity indicates that one pole cannot exist without the other. Your genuine desire is proof that the other pole, the other person, is also in this dance, even if their steps are different or slower at this moment. What you perceive as an external blockage is often the reflection of an inner resistance to believing that you deserve this love without having to fight, suffer, or chase in order to receive it. By clarifying your own signal, you allow the non-local connection to do its work, aligning the coordinates so that the physical meeting becomes inevitable. Everything you have heard so far brings us to this exact moment, a moment that allows no hesitation or postponement. You stand before a fundamental energetic crossroads, where the story stops depending on chance and begins to respond to your conscious will. Until now, you have probably lived the connection from a reactive stance, waiting for something external to happen in order to feel safe or validated. But the universe does not hand command over destiny to someone who does not dare to hold it. The next step, this definitive movement promised by the title of this message, is not a manipulation strategy or a perfectly worded text message designed to get a response. The real step, the one that has the power to transform reality, is a movement of inner sovereignty. This is the turning point where you must choose between two paths that cannot be walked at the same time: the path of losing fear or the path of earning certainty. For too long, fear has been the silent screenwriter of this story, dictating every anxious thought and every sleepless night. Fear whispers to you that if you stop insisting, the connection will disappear. But the truth is exactly the opposite. It is fear that keeps the connection in a state of suffocation. The step you must take today involves giving up the need to control the outcome in order to gain something far more valuable: your own peace and alignment. Here lies the greatest paradox of spiritual connections. To have something, you must first be willing to lose it, or at least to loosen your desperate grip on it.
This is not about stopping loving, but about stopping needing. It is a declaration of independence of the emotions. When you internally decide that your well-being is no longer negotiable, and that your happiness is not a bargaining chip carried in someone else's pocket, a seismic shift occurs in the structure of the relationship. Fate does not interpret this stance as arrogance, but as dignity. And dignity is undoubtedly the most attractive quality that exists in the universe. And this movement requires courage because it means facing the temporary emptiness that obsession leaves behind. But it is precisely in this space that magic can occur, when you feel that your soul is ready to stop begging for attention and begin attracting what is rightfully yours by the law of consciousness. It is necessary to anchor this decision on the physical plane. As an act of commitment to your own process and to send a clear signal to the universe that you have understood the lesson, I invite you to leave a testimony of your will. If you are ready to reclaim your power now, declare your intention by writing the sentence in the comments, "I deserve the totality." By doing so, you are not just writing words, you are signing an energetic contract with yourself and with life, and affirming that you no longer accept fragments, doubts, or crumbs of affection. This declaration marks the end of the victim phase and the beginning of the creator phase. By accepting that you deserve the totality, you are telling the universe that anything less no longer resonates with you. And strangely enough, when you raise your standard, reality is forced to rise to meet you. This person, who until now has operated from a place of convenience, knowing you were waiting, will feel the change. They will not be able to explain it logically, but they will sense that something fundamental has shifted. You are no longer a safe option at the end of the hallway. You have become a mystery, someone who values themselves enough to move on. Once you make this decision, something surprising happens in the psyche of the other person. Jung spoke of participatory mysticism, a merging of identities where it becomes difficult to know where one ends and the other begins. By breaking the dependency, you break this unhealthy fusion and become a whole individual again. And only two whole individuals can meet in a sacred union. This is your next step, to retreat from the edge of desperation and stand firmly at the center of your own life. It is a movement that opens a new path or closes the old one forever. But in any case, it gives you back your freedom. And only from freedom can true love flourish. Now that the decision has been made, the practical question arises of how to maintain this state in everyday life. Here we enter the terrain of inner alchemy, the process of transforming the lead of fear into the gold of personal magnetism. The concept of letting go is often misunderstood and generates immense resistance because the mind associates it with forgetting, indifference, or definitive loss. It is mistakenly believed that letting go means erasing this person from memory or stopping wanting their presence. Nothing could be further from the truth. Letting go in the spiritual and energetic sense is not an act of expulsion, it is an act of liberation. Letting go means giving up obsessive control over the when and how. It means taking your hands off the throat of fate so it can breathe.
Imagine holding a handful of sand tightly. The more you clench your fist, the more grains slip through your fingers. When you let go, you simply open your hand. The sand is still there, but now it rests on your palm without pressure. In the same way, you can keep love for this person in your heart without the need to suffocate the connection with urgency. It is this shift in attitude that allows energy to flow back to you instead of constantly leaking outward. There is a mechanical principle in energy work. Attention is directed energy. All this time, by obsessively thinking about this person, checking their movements and worrying about their absence, you have been sending enormous amounts of your own life energy to them. You have literally been feeding their energy system with yours. That is why this person feels so calm, so capable of moving on with their life without looking back. They are full of your energy. They do not need to seek you because they have you energetically present all the time. You, on the other hand, feel constant exhaustion, fatigue, and emptiness because you are giving your power away. Alchemy begins when you decide to withdraw this attention and bring it back home to your own center. At first, this may feel strange, as if you were cutting off a vital supply, but it is essential. When you stop energetically feeding the other party, two things happen. First, you regain your vitality, your radiance, and your attractiveness. You become again that interesting and vibrant person someone could fall in love with. Second, the other person experiences a disruption in supply. Suddenly, the constant flow of attention they were receiving for free stops. When this energetic supply pattern collapses, a vacuum is created, and the universe abhors a vacuum. It is precisely at this moment that the dynamic begins to reverse. The other person suddenly feels the absence of your presence, not as pressure, but as an unresolved emptiness. Something is missing, something they had previously taken for granted without question. This subtle pull, this feeling that your energy is no longer available, awakens an instinctive curiosity. Not infrequently, the other side begins at exactly this point to wonder what has happened within you, why you have grown inwardly quiet, and why your energy no longer flows to them as it once did. This mystery, this new version of you that is no longer available at the push of a button, becomes magnetic. And magnetism that arises from inner calm is far stronger than any form of pursuit. Here, the highest truth of this entire journey reveals itself. It is not longing that brings someone back, but your return to yourself. When you gather your energy, take your center, and stop losing yourself in the external world, you send the clearest message to the universe and to this person, a message that comes not from lack, but from abundance. And abundance attracts. Whether this connection is ultimately renewed or dissolves no longer matters in this state, because you have regained control of your own story. The reunion can then occur, not as a rescue, but as a conscious choice of two complete souls. And if the universe has destined this path for you, the door will open at the right time, effortlessly, clearly, and without struggle.
At this stage, what matters most is not predicting the outcome, but stabilizing the inner ground from which any outcome emerges. When you stop measuring time, responses, or signs, you exit the cycle of anticipation and enter presence. Presence is not passive, it is deeply active. It reorganizes your inner world so that life no longer feels paused. You begin to breathe fully again, act without hidden agendas, and live without checking whether something is missing. This shift does not cancel the connection, it purifies it. Love that survives without supervision is real. When you no longer monitor the thread between you, it strengthens on its own terms. Silence stops being interpreted as rejection and becomes space, and space is where clarity forms. In this state, you are no longer trying to pull the future toward you. You are allowing it to approach naturally, without resistance or force. From here, whatever unfolds will do so honestly. If this person steps forward, it will be because they feel free to choose, not compelled by your need. And if they do not, you will still remain intact, guided by self-respect rather than longing. This is the point where destiny stops testing endurance and begins responding to alignment. Nothing essential is lost here, only distortion dissolves. You are no longer defined by waiting or hoping, you are defined by embodiment. By living your days fully instead of holding them hostage to a possibility. This is how cycles truly close or reopen through inner resolution, not external pressure. The universe does not respond to desperation, it responds to coherence. And coherence begins the moment you choose yourself without conditions. So remain here, grounded, awake, open without chasing. Let life meet you where you stand rather than where you once waited. Whether love returns in form or transforms into wisdom, it will do so cleanly, because you are no longer negotiating your worth with silence. From this place, only truth moves forward, and whatever is meant for you will recognize you instantly.